in some ways it's kind of liberating.
You got a big up in that.
Yeah, but it's not going to 5 days.
I didn't go see if he had a hole, and I'm not sure. Thank you.
That's right.
Morning, how are you today? Morning, Dr. Yes. I go.
Would you like that seat there?
No, I'm going to stay. I'm going to go pretty quick. I grab it back there. So you need to be plugged in. Yeah, well, you take a
All right, good morning. That was bright and early, right? Good.
Oh, rock and roll.
The House Education Subcommittee on Education Innovation will come to order. I welcome everybody to the 8th floor. I welcome you to 7 a.m. Stay tuned for the time start on Tuesday. Depending on how well we do today, we may start at 7 a.m. on Tuesday. But stay tuned. We have an electronic sign-up sheet. The first person on the list is Delegate Rasool. He has asked me if this bill could go by for the day without objection. House Bill 2434 will go by for the day. I did tell Delegate Rasool we have one meeting after this, so we'll see how that goes. So that brings us to Delegate Weber, who's next, but he's running a couple minutes late, which brings us to Delegate Austin, which is House Bill 1414. Think way back to meeting 1. We heard this bill. We heard it. We didn't do anything with it. It is the bill on partial credit for exams. So Delegate Austin, if you could just recap, and I think there's a substitute.
Yes, sir.
And if we could pass out the substitute, I'll give you the floor. Delegate Austin, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, as you recall, we met and you all had some concerns with this bill, as did the Department of Education in regard to the cost of implementing. We've since worked with Ms. Cave in the Department of Education, and they've crafted some new language that I'm agreeable to, and I hope you all will be agreeable to. I think you may have it before you. If you like, I'll read it, Mr. Chairman.
Being that it's this early, I would actually love for you to read it. Are we good with that?
Yes. It says the Department of Education shall work with the existing education advisory committees on assessments to implement a review for the selection of multi-part standard of learning assessment questions for the potential award of partial credit to students who answer part of a test question correctly. With such funds as are appropriated, partial credit scoring shall be implemented for appropriate assessment questions in at least one subject area by 2018/2019 school year.
It is early, but those are not the words on my piece of paper.
That's not it.
Is there a different version?
Well,
Hold on, everybody.
Sorry.
That's okay, Ryan.
I got that language, I put it into section 1 bill form, and just got it.
okay. So this is the language.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's.
Well, this is what Cindy gave me. I didn't realize it had been crafted with this.
I knew it was 7 a.m.
All right. We'll read this line.
Okay.
So the Department of Education will collaborate with existing educational advisory committees in the Commonwealth that advise on student assessment to review multi-part standard learning assessment questions and determine the feasibility of awarding students partial credit for scoring answers on one or more parts of such questions with such funds as may be appropriate for such purpose. The the Department of Education shall implement partial credit scoring for the appropriate multi-part assessment questions in at least one subject area no later than 2018-2019 school year.
Excellent. Delegate Elson, thank you. Are there questions of the subcommittee of the patron? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, substitute is now before us. Delegate Yancey.
Quick question, so I don't have obviously the correct version of your, as I was listening to you, just making some notes here, but just for, as the chairman said, since 7 a.m., line, on my piece of paper, anyways, line 12, with such funds as may be appropriated for such purpose, just gotta ask, since money's an issue, especially with our current budget, I read that as a sort of budget impact.
Well,
Am I reading that correctly?
Delegate Elson.
they feel that they can implement some of this without a budget impact.
Okay.
Dave, and that's why they set the timeline associated with the implementation, not me.
All right, so Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Yancey.
Just to make sure I understand, DOE is of the opinion, it's not gonna be a fiscal impact, they can handle it. If it is an issue, they come back for the 2018 budget to address it, is that right?
Let's hear that from.
Hi, good morning, Cindy Kay, Education. As we discussed with Delegate Austin, we can begin the review of these test items to see if they're appropriate. But then when it comes to actually having to go back and reprogram and then make sure that the test actually incorporate grading so that you can have partial credit, there will be a fiscal impact. So we will need some financial support for this. We can begin this summer, we have our educational review committees and so forth, but that's why the phrase was such a is maybe appropriate, because ultimately we will need some money. I apologize, I don't have a fiscal impact at this time.
So one last phone.
Delegate Yancey.
Thank you, and I, listen, it's, we know where we're at in this session, so it's up to just make sure, for myself, as a member of the subcommittee, just so we're clear, as of this moment, going forward, starting in July, if the bill becomes signed into law, July 1st going forward, you feel you have the resources necessary to begin the process by which you can allocate current resources available to make sure that everything is done correctly, and then you feel that by 2018, you can come back to the legislature, to the appropriations committee, and say, this is what we believe is going to cost more.
We will need that. We will need that.
Thank you. Any other questions of the subcommittee? Delegate Boulevard.
More of kind of a statement, if I recall.
I'll do it after the motion.
There's a lot of support for the underlying concept.
Yes.
I think the issue was that not all test questions are created equally, and so this is a two-step process. So it's assessed first, and then it's phased rollout of implementation later. I think it's nicely done, takes advantage of our existing committees that we have in place, and is also sensitive to the fact that we need money to actually implement.
Any other questions of the subcommittee? Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak in favor of the bill?
No superintendent's, that was the school position. Federation of Teachers
Anybody in the audience like to speak in opposition to the bill? Okay. Subcommittee?
Move to report the substitute.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second to report. I should have said this before I asked for the motion. This whole thing about with such funds as may be appropriated is absolutely a requirement to go upstairs because there are no funds appropriated. I would ask if the subcommittee's willing to withdraw, we would ask for another. If not, take the vote. But that, there is no money for this bill right now, so it has to go upstairs.
Substitution,
I'll withdraw. Thank you, Dave. Delegate.
Report and refer to appropriations.
All right, there's a motion on the table to report and refer.
Just a quick question.
There's a
Mr. Chairman.
second, and now there's discussion. Delegate Newcomber.
Don't we, and believe me, I think the ninth floor is a black hole. You have no idea that what happens, but aren't we standing the chance that this good bill can go up there and even though we have a year's worth of work to be done, that it dies a death?
Delegate Yancey.
An observation, Mr. Chairman, just, I mean, obviously I don't serve on appropriations, but my experience has been with something along these lines. That, I think the members of appropriations certainly would address, and I think it certainly would be understood, and if they feel that perhaps this is something that they can move forward on, and in 2018 we have to address. But nevertheless, the reason why I asked those three questions of the patron was simply because at some point we're gonna have to address this issue, and I suspect that the members of appropriations to assure that all the resources available to education are met, I would presume that this is part of the process to which we have to assure that if we pass this legislation, we can assure the children that this is the type of resources available to make sure that they get the type of credit. Is that your feelings from your experience?
My experience is a little different than that. I might suggest that Delegate Dudenheffer has made a very accurate depiction as it relates to this bill. I want to make sure I pick my words carefully here, because I'm not currently serving on that subcommittee about this bill, but if I was serving on that subcommittee about this bill when it went upstairs, I would have a lot of trouble with the middle of line 12 all the way through the end. And so Delegate Bullivan talked about a two-step process. There are two things that I have concerns with. Whenever a bill from the Senate comes over that says with such funds as may be appropriated, it is immediately edited, so those monies come out, and the question is, are they appropriated or are they not appropriated? And the second piece is, in the code, we're requiring the Department of Education to do something that doesn't give them any money to do it. So if it really is a step two process or two-step process, it would say the department shall do all this work, which they can do on their own, and stop at that question in the middle of line 12. And then next year we would appropriate funds and they would go, and then they shall implement all the things they just learned in a second bill. That's the outcome that I would anticipate would happen upstairs. We can do that now, or you guys can pass the policy and that can probably happen upstairs. It'll be very difficult to pass this bill as drafted, but it can be amended upstairs.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Yancey.
For the time being, in order to give the patron the opportunity to make a decision, I'll withdraw my motion. So that if he chooses, we can make the amendment necessary, and then we can make a motion going forward.
Okay. Delegate
Just
Dudenheffer.
one quick question again. If we eliminate those, from with such funds to the end, does it now not have to go upstairs?
Let me ask one question of the department, Cindy. Cindy, do you have the ability to absorb the workload associated with the first three lines, which says you will collaborate with existing advisory committees in the Commonwealth and you will advise students on the multi-part and you will determine the flexibility of awarding partial credits on one or more questions, period. Can you do that work without any additional funds from the Commonwealth? Then the answer is it could just be reported in that state.
I think that's the best outcome.
I concur.
Terry, so
I agree.
there's a potential adjustment to the bill, Ryan, that would, another substitute or a line amendment to the substitute, however you draft it, striking middle of line 12 with through the end. Everybody understand what we're doing? Good? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Good. Now there's a motion
To report.
to report, thank you.
As amended.
Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Pretty good. You got partial credit on your bill, that's pretty good. Delegate Leftwich, very nice.
Thank you, Joe.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Yes, sir, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, that got everybody going. Next on the sign-up list is Delegate Fillicorn. Next after that is Delegate Bagby, Lemunyon, and Davis, so just so we know where we are in the sign-up. Delegate Fillicorn is bringing us 1708. And there is a substitute that is coming around to the members of the subcommittee. As that's being passed around, why don't we make a motion to put it in front of us, and then Delegate Fillicorn, you can explain your substitute.
Second.
All those in favor of adopting the substitute, the House Bill 1708, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Delegate Fillicorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. subcommittee. This bill is fairly simple and clear. Spent time chatting with all of you about it. What it does is it ensures that the State Board of Ed considers accreditation standards, that includes the number of industry credentials in the accreditation standards. And I think now, we spend a lot of time talking about the high-tech paying jobs that require a skilled workforce. And we know a lot of our schools around Virginia are struggling to receive accreditation. And as we've tried to emphasize to our kids how important it is that they think outside the box, we need to be doing the same. And I think it's a simple bill, but would be very helpful at this time. We've been working with several different organizations and groups, including the chambers. We've got support from the Virginia Chamber, Statewide Chamber, Hampton Roads Chamber, Northern Virginia Chamber. Again, it's all about moving forward with the workforce that we have and ensuring that when the State Board of Ed considers accreditation standards, it includes a number of industry credentials. Fairly simple, few words.
Yeah, thank you, Delegate Phillips. Any questions of the subcommittee? Anybody in the audience like to speak in favor of the bill? Please step forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Kevin McNulty with the Northern Virginia Chamber, and support Delegate Phillips' bill.
Thank you, Kevin. Any others in the audience like to speak in favor? Is there anyone who'd like to speak in opposition to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, move to report.
There is a motion and a second to report House Bill 1708 as a substitute. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you, Delegate
Thank
Phillips.
you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the subcommittee.
We should let you go
Two
first.
places at once.
Delegate Bagby, House Bill 1923. This is a bill that is of the topic of virtual education, but it is not quite in the same posture as Delegate Bullivan and Delegate Bell. So we will hear Delegate Bagby's, we can determine what we want to do, and my goal is to take Delegate Bullivan's and Delegate Bell, since they're on the committee, back to back. Okay, so Delegate Bagby, House Bill 1923, the floor is yours.
I appreciate, Chair, you doing that, separating those out. I will stay for, Bullivan and Bell's, because I'm interested in the conversation. But this bill is virtually the easiest bill you will, come across this year.
Heard that before.
The bill clarifies virtual Virginia programs shall be available to every middle and high school, in Virginia. The bill also clarifies that the program may be expanded to elementary school. Clearly, the program is required to be made available to every high school. The bill also replaces a reference to statewide electronic classroom with an online learning program, which is more consistent with what it's actually doing.
Awesome, thank you, Delegate Bagby. Any questions of the subcommittee of the patron? Any questions? Delegate Lethbridge.
I guess the two questions. The first is there any cost implication of that?
No, and I'm sure there's someone to verify that here today. Good morning.
Cindy Kay, again, this is virtually a technical cleanup bill of language. There's no cost. Right now, we offer electronic classroom to middle schools, but it's not in the code. The code hasn't been changed. It just says high school. So we want to bring the code up to date. Also, the terminology of the code is old. We want to bring that up to date. So it is virtually a cleanup bill.
Any other questions? I have a couple questions. Delegate Left.
And I guess there's nothing in this bill that's inconsistent with Delegate Bullivan or
It would support either one of their bills.
Not exactly.
In my compliment, maybe not
Yeah,
support.
I mean, it's not,
Delegate.
doesn't really damage it, but it's.
Any other questions of the subcommittee? I have a couple questions, and Delegate Bagby, I read this again last night. I'm gonna make my statement, but you can't do anything about it because it's already in the code. But the very first sentence of number 13 is one of those things we don't like. But there are monies already appropriated, and that's already existing code, and your bill didn't change that. So I will get over my heartache on that. And second, what what are the courses that are currently offered under Virtual Virginia in the statewide electronic classroom? My understanding is they are largely high school level courses, AP courses, geographically diverse. I'm going to get education here in just a second. And so my question as I'm going through this is which one of those are even relevant to middle and then elementary school? So that's the question, but I think you've got some support over here.
Yeah, I can answer the middle part, but,
Okay, yeah.
Serving as a former, assistant principal on the middle school level, I know that there were a number of students that were, on the level to take a, let's say, geometry course that is not offered at the middle school, but would be offered at the, high school. So we would have to transport those students to the high school, and I will leave it up to them to help with the elementary.
Awesome. Yes, sir. Thank you. Welcome.
Well, currently, there are no courses in, I'm sorry, Mark Saunders, Department of Education,
Thank you, Mark.
Director of Technology and Virtual Learning. Currently, there are no elementary courses offered in Virginia. That's why they would, in the future, may be available, so that would give us that opportunity. Currently, the most popular courses are the world language courses and Algebra 1.
Mark, thank you very much. Mark, follow-up question. How many courses do we have? I had a number of 54 in my head a year ago or so. Are we more than that, or are we still pretty
Well,
close?
the program offers 70 courses currently. Of those 70 courses, 23 of them are appropriate for middle schoolers. Again, the majority of them being foreign language and Algebra 1 geometry.
Okay, sounds good, Mark. Thank you. Any other questions of the subcommittee?
Mr. Chairman,
Delegate Bell.
expanding this to elementary school. Elementary school students don't take courses, right? They generally have the same teacher all day long in most cases. So this would be a full-time virtual program for elementary school?
Say not necessarily, just like at the middle school level, supplement courses that a school may not be able to provide on their own. So it would be supplementary.
Good, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Bell.
Could you give me an example of what that might be at the elementary level? The elementary piece kind of knocks me off balance.
Well, again, I guess it's right. They may be available. It's not that we require the opportunities there. Really hard to say right now, but just would open that possibility for the future.
Okay, Mark. Tom, did you have a thought on that?
Yeah, Tom Smith Superintendent Association. I actually had 2 students when I was a superintendent in 5th grade that were ready for Algebra 1. Just really advanced students. And at that time, Virtual Virginia wasn't available to them, so we had to transport them to the middle school for Algebra 1. This would have allowed them to take it during a period at the elementary school.
In line with Delegate Bell's question, I had a similar thought last night, trying to figure out what was happening at the elementary school level. Again, looking at it this morning, it dawned on me that, based on, Cindy, your comments, we're catching up with what we're already doing in middle school and letting the code follow that say middle schoolers can now take those courses. Those courses now exist in the form of 70 standalone courses that you can pick from. In my opinion, all we're doing here is creating a framework that elementary schools, sometime in the future, may take advantage of an elementary type offering that doesn't exist, gives you the flexibility to do that without coming back here to recraft open the code to say, okay, now let's go do that. So to me, this is just a framework bill setting up the opportunity to potentially develop elementary level courses that may, elementary level subjects that may ultimately be available in the future. That's my opinion of the bill. Delegate Boulevard.
Delegate Bagby is basically taking away somebody's bill 5 years from now to play catch up on elementary.
That's right, and I will remind him of that if I'm still here, which would be great. But I think that's what's happening. Anyone in the audience wants to think about that? Anybody in the audience would like to speak in favor of the bill? Yes.
It's it's not so much favor, but I can tell you how at our elementary school it worked when we had students who were more advanced level, and this was a lower income school. They often were given time out of the regular classroom with the librarian, other personnel in the school who would just offer them extended learning experiences. So I think something like this would be beneficial both for the time that's spent with those types of students now by taking other people from their work.
Yes, ma'am, and thank you for that. So, food for thought, Delegate Bell. I actually thought about it from the other perspective. We've talked about Algebra 1 and the 2 kids, and we've talked about advanced. In my elementary school, there are 58 languages spoken today. And I would see a path here that said, teacher number 1 can now draw down an elementary style language reading catch-up program through Virtual Virginia, allowing that student to then go forward and catch up with the rest of the class. I see some opportunities for kids who are falling behind in math and take a different course or subject that's not there now. This is about freeing up the teacher to do more within the classroom, benefiting from potential courses that may be developed in the future. So that's where my head was on the elementary piece. Happy, does anybody in the audience want to speak in opposition to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Steve Portman with K-12 Inc. And we appreciate Delegate Bagby's intent on this, and I think that the concept of making sure we are expanding access to virtual education is what we should be doing as a Commonwealth. My client is one of the state's multi-division online providers. We provide full-time education services, much like Virtual Virginia does, for students, for about 1,500 students from 120 jurisdictions around the state. We go through a rigorous multi-division online provider process triennially, and then with annual review to align our curriculum to the SOLs. We have to do this, we have to bring in third-party vendors that are very costly. We're not sure how this would interplay with the multi-division online provider process with full-time elementary and full-time middle school, which is primarily where our service line is right now. So we may have 2 tracks. Again, this is, Delegate Bagby, I appreciate you bringing this bill up, and I think the intent of trying to do catch-up for courses we're already kind of teaching kids apparently is laudable, but I just want to make sure I raise that question about how we have potentially 2 different regulatory tracks. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience like to speak in opposition to the bill? All right, back to subcommittee level. Okay, any other questions on the bill or comments before we entertain motions? Delegate Bell.
Mr. Chairman, let me be clear. I'm the last person, as you know, to find fault with virtual education, particularly full-time virtual education. So I'm not doing that, and I don't want that to be misconstrued. The problem I'm having, Delegate Bagby, is we're expanding a program. Clearly, there's expansion of a program if we extend it to elementary school. I don't know of anything we've expanded lately that doesn't cost money. And I don't understand why there's not some kind of fiscal impact of this. I'm all for expanding virtual. I'm all for every child in K through 12 who can benefit from it having that same opportunity. But I would like to have a level playing field.
It's a fair statement. Any other questions or comments of the subcommittee? Okay. Is there a motion on the bill?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to report House Bill, the one we're talking about. Did we change it? No. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? There's one no. Delegate back. Thank you. Thank you. Next on the sign-up sheet is Delegate Weber, who has now joined us. Come forward. Awesome. Good to hear from you. This is House Bill 1991. Is there a substitute or a line item?
Yes, sir.
Amendment? Okay. All those in favor say aye. All right, substitute is now before us for 1991. Delegate Widget.
Okay. So essentially, I represent a school district that has on the LCI a .79 on the LCI. They were .8. They used to receive a little less than $1 million from the state for their school system. Their property taxes paid for the rest of the school system. They were receiving basic supplemental aid from the Commonwealth at a cost of $250,000. In the budget last year, their LCI dropped from .8 to .79, and in that effect, they received an extra $155,000 from the state. However, they reached the threshold of $1.19 million. And so essentially they lost their $250,000 for a net loss on their budget. And this is a very small school, and what that basic aid, that basic supplemental aid is they form a partnership, they're allowed to form a partnership with a neighboring school district that's .6, or a neighboring school district, so that they can ship kids back and forth to take advantage of courses that they obviously cannot offer because they're not big enough to offer them, such as CTE programs, etc. And so what the bill as amended does is it raises that threshold, I think, if I'm correct, from the 1.19 to basically 1.3, so that the school can receive their basic supplemental aid.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the subcommittee? Okay. You'll get another chance, but you're going to delegate left.
My instinct tells me this needs to, if there's a motion to report it, we will.
That would be the right instinct.
Let's begin part of it.
Anyone in the audience want to speak in opposition to the bill? I'm sorry, in favor of the bill. Maybe I was thinking about my own opposition. Anybody want to think about in favor of the bill? Would anyone like to speak in opposition to the bill? Back to subcommittee. Yes.
Clarification. So to get from the 1.9 to the 1.3, you're building in that .6 school?
No,
How did you
okay,
get from
so,
the one to the other?
so
I missed that.
essentially, because of where they fall on the LCI schedule, the 1.3 threshold they fall under. So then they would then qualify for their basic supplemental aid.
Any other questions of the subcommittee?
I apologize, can I clarify?
Yes, please.
The .6, essentially, the basic supplemental aid is used to provide additional education with courses. They're allowed to partner with a neighboring school district because of where they fall. And so they partner with the Madison School District to take advantage of CTE and things like that. So essentially, the basic supplemental aid is used for those kids to go between the two schools to get classes that they wouldn't otherwise be able to take. That's exactly what the supplemental aid is used for.
Thanks.
Any other questions of the subcommittee? The patron has done a great job representing one of his school districts. My concern, notwithstanding the impact on the budget and potential money, is the precedent setting that next year when I come to talk to you about Loudoun's LCI and the unique challenges that we have of building 2.5 schools every year and adding 2,400 students every year, I'm going to ask this subcommittee to think about the changes for my LCI. And then I would expect each of you to do the same thing for your districts, and this thing's going to unravel real quick. And so, notwithstanding exactly what you should be doing as a representative, I still think it needs to go upstairs, but I will be voting no on the motion because of that. I think we did not need the substitute, is that true?
No.
Thank you, Becky. The substitute is now before us. Delegate Bolden.
And Mr. Chairman, with love in my heart, I'm kind of in the same posture. I've got a city with a .8, and that makes it very tough for us. But you know, I do want to bring up the fact that we have an LCI that is outdated and broken in my estimation, and it's something
wanna amend this bill? Cause that would be a great effort if we wanted to just amend it to say, let's start over.
Well, I've got a bill for a study.
Anybody wanna speak in favor of that?
And made it to committee.
Not on.
Didn't pass. It'll pass this stuff.
I bet you we have pros and cons speaking to that amendment to this bill.
If I could.
Yes, Delegate, last one.
Just, this is essentially a program that they had, and then they lost because they gained $155,000 on their LCI. This is a school that receives $1.1 million from the state. Their budget is less than probably what it costs to run a couple of classrooms in Rockland. So there's a significant difference, and the precedent is something that they'd already, essentially been a program that they'd already been taking. And so, this just puts the school back in a posture where they were. That's all.
Thank you.
Motion.
Delegate.
And I'll make, I mean, I think we know that type of Pandora's box, maybe addressing this, but I do see some value in the bills in front of appropriations, a discussion's gonna happen. Bill Weaver's gonna address the subcommittee, and maybe it just brings more awareness to it, and also, with that in mind, I'm gonna make a motion to report and refer.
There's an appropriate motion to report and refer the substitute. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor of reporting and referring the substitute, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No.
Two.
Just you.
Give me a chance to make my speech again.
That's right, the report, the bill is reported and referred. Thank you for bringing this forward. This is the beginning of a much larger conversation than maybe.
Appreciate it.
Yep. All right, next is Delegate Lemunyon is next, but I don't see him, and then Delegate Davis. Delegate Davis is bringing before us House Bill 2378. This subcommittee has seen this bill before in years past.
Yes, sir. Delegate Albert.
Delegate Reese carried it last year too.
Apologize, Mr. Chairman.
No, that's okay. And then I got a bunch of emails in French saying that I hate French people.
Say la vie.
Say la vie. Delegate Davis. Is there a substitute? It's all set?
No.
Okay, good. Delegate Davis.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm here to confirm that you were right last year.
Wow.
Where's your tag?
You know, you really, you were ahead of your time. It looks since you, Florida's found a way, and Texas has found a way, and now Virginia, if we don't get moving, we won't even be in the top 5 to 10 states that actually make this transition. Mr. Chairman, what we've realized is we're still requiring classes like we did when you and I were in high school. And times have changed. So we didn't have really the internet back then. I remember teaching myself the code in BASIC in a Commodore 64 computer. We all had. But there, yeah, I had one of those too. And but I've had a chance to do some traveling, and many of y'all have traveled around the world. And our kids are really starting to suffer and fall behind. Recently, I was out in Estonia. I met with the co-founder of Skype, who started coding at the age of 10. They teach coding to kids at a young age in school, and they continue those classes all the way through. A lot of countries shift based on what the true need is in their country and what they see the changing dynamics are with industries. So there's been a desire here in many states now, like I mentioned, Florida and Texas have already done it. Michigan, Montana, Washington, New Mexico, and Georgia are looking at it as well, on replacing and allowing the student to take a coding class, or classes in some cases, and replace it with foreign language. Now, I don't say that this is right for every student. I don't say that every student should not take a foreign language, but I do say just as foreign language is right for some students, coding is right for others. We all know the benefits of coding. We know it's a critical thinking skill. We know that in 2016, computer science graduates had the second highest starting salary of all graduates. They did not tell me what the first was. I don't think it was lawyers, but y'all would probably be able to tell me better than others. So I'm here to put the bill back in that would allow a student to replace a foreign language requirement with a coding requirement. I know that there was a little bit of concern in years past about higher ed and the admission standards, but I would hesitate to say that our universities are refusing to take students from Florida and Texas, and will refuse to take students from Michigan, Montana, Washington, New Mexico, and Georgia just because they take a coding class as opposed to a foreign language class. And I would argue that I think if that's the case, our universities need to shift and realize what truly the skills are that our students need to graduate high school with to arguably be better performed or be better prepared to perform at the university level. And that's what you have in front of you today.
Delegate Davis, thank you very much. Any questions of the subcommittee?
So, Mr. Chairman,
It's optional.
a couple of questions.
Delegate Yancey.
So, first question, so I've had the opportunity to travel overseas too. I've had the opportunity to visit with schools, I've had the opportunity to visit with teachers overseas. They offer both English classes and computer programming if you so choose. Why can't the local school go ahead and do that? Why do you have to switch one for the other?
Oh, I don't think we mandate it. I think that, just as all things, you allow a child to take whatever they so desire. As we all remember when we were in school, there were always classes I wanted to take, but I never had the ability to take them because we have arguably a shorter school day than many other countries around the world, a shorter school season than many other countries around the world. So you can only take so many classes. So this gives choice to the students and the parents, and they can decide whether they want to take that foreign language or that one class or the computer science. I'd also say the countries I've been to when it comes to English and foreign language, they don't wait to high school to teach English. They learn English at a young age. They learn the foreign languages. They have additional one besides their home language at a young age. But we wait to halfway through middle school or high school when we're really trying to prepare our students to go into university or into the workforce. And at that point, I think we need to concentrate on the skills that would better prepare them to arguably have that second highest paying job of any industry.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up question?
So
I would
Yancey.
also say that if you go to overseas countries, you will also find that a lot of American television shows or movies are broadcast and they teach them, and they don't have anything as far as the adults concerned, so the child can learn that. We don't even do that in our own country. So the question then would be along those lines, while the child has a unique opportunity to learn English in a foreign country that is a little bit different with the way we choose to have media entertainment, my question would be this: as I read the legislation, yours, compared to the 2016 bill dealing with 22.1, 253, and if I'm incorrect, this is where I'm looking for clarity. It follows the same path, but then it says unless it's going to be accepted by a national accreditation. So if I'm taking French, or I'm taking German, or I'm taking Latin, and I want that to be able to go into my university credit, or I want whatever it is for that guidance, I'm struggling to understand how it is then that I can take this computer code unless I need to be able to have my foreign language equivalency in order to satisfy this national equivalency, which I have to have in order to go to university. So if you can help clarify.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yes, sir.
Delegate Davis.
It's, Mr. Chairman, this isn't necessarily around the diploma, but it's around certain diplomas that are nationally recognized, worldwide, the IB diploma, the International Baccalaureate Program. That curriculum that we have a number of schools that follow that curriculum in Virginia is dictated from that level, so we don't have jurisdiction over them. So I cannot mandate that an IB diploma allow this swap to happen. But we can as far as the advanced diploma and those sort of things that we have control in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So it's more of a recognition that there are diplomas that we cannot adjust that are much higher level than ours.
One final question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Delegate.
One final question to the patron, and that would be, so in my school system, City of Newport News, we have magnet programs, we have governors academies, and in the governors academy, for example, they have a partnership with Newport News Shipbuilding where they're teaching a lot in dealing with not just advanced manufacturing, but virtual augmented reality, and obviously some of the things that you're referring to. We have Virginia Aviation Academy, which wants to address some of these matters. You have magnet programs in City of Newport News schools where they have certain children who want to study certain aspects, going to target specific schools in conjunction with those things that obviously the Department of Education would like those children to have by the time they graduate. So my question would be then, in light of that, does this bill affect anything along those lines? Would it then throw off any of the opportunities that Newport News Public Schools are offering in those two opportunities?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I'd answer that no. All this does is, right now there are a set of requirements that includes foreign language credits, regardless of how you're graduating today. And in any of those situations that the delegate mentioned, the student would have the ability to substitute, if allowed credit hours exist in this curriculum, to substitute a coding class for a foreign language requirement and still get the desired diploma that he's looking for from the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Any other questions to the subcommittee? Two comments. One, we are in the process of eliminating the diploma versus advanced diploma. Two, we are in the process of a major high school redesign and understanding that pathways for kids are different and they should all be accepted equally. And that work's being done, and we haven't seen result of that work. And number three, one of the problems we ran into last year, we don't have enough teachers that are capable of teaching computer science through an entire track, i.e. 4 or 5 courses. I am 1,000% with you. We need to figure out how to graduate those that are ready in this new world that we're in. But we've taken a couple, 3 steps to prepare for that, and this bill as written just jumps through all of those steps and doesn't take into consideration the foundation needed to support a bill like this.
Sure.
So that's my reaction to the bill. Anyone in the audience want to speak in favor of the bill? Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in opposition to the bill? Does anybody in the audience care about the bill? Delegate Davis,
Sure.
I'll give you the last word.
Well, Microsoft Chairman John Thompson could not be here today, but he is in favor of this bill, I can assure you, since it's very similar to the Florida bill that he came out very strongly in support of. I definitely understand the concerns we have. I would love to see a 4 or 5 course curriculum eventually, to the extent that there is a lot of work going towards that. Right now, we don't have a 1 course curriculum. And I think that we have children in middle school and children in high school that do not have this opportunity. And in many cases, it's that one experience. We all know that one experience in school we had that changed our life forever, and I had mine. Unfortunately, it sent me here as opposed to coding. But so if you give the child that one chance to be able to do something like this, it makes a difference. I think baby steps, while we continue to move down this path to a very robust solution, I think is a good thing. And I do think that we do have some teachers in the schools, i.e. the AP computer science professors, that we have in there that are usually more than qualified to teach computer science as well as the AP course, could probably teach that additional class. I don't mind a deferment on its execution.